Hi guys, welcome back to another Unity tutorial. My name is Devin, and today we're going to be picking up where we left off on our platformer game by adding art and animation to it. First, we're going to place around the ground tiles and make sure everything still functions and looks correct. Then we'll move on to the character sprite sheet where we'll chop up the different frames for our walk, jump, and idle animations. Then we'll move on to our animator, which will determine when our player should move between those different animations, and then finally we'll write the script that will talk to our animator so that everything animates the way that you would expect it to. And the end result should look something like this. Now, as always, don't forget to like and subscribe if you found this helpful. It always encourages me to make more videos more often. So, without further ado, let's get started. So I've got a few really cool art pieces from Kenny. And if you don't know, kenny.nl is a great website that gives away fantastic 2D vector artwork for use in any game for free. So if you're a indie developer, you don't have a lot of time or money to spend on artwork, Kenny's a great resource. So let's go back to Unity, and I'm going to go ahead and start filling in these tiles, start arting them up. And you'll notice that this is sorting behind our temp art at the moment. That's not important because we're about to delete our temp art, but in case you're wondering, you can change the sorting order by either creating a new sorting layer or increasing the value of this variable on certain sprites to make them come forward or backward. And right now everything's just on the default layer because I didn't set up sorting layers. Anyway, let's finish this platform. I'm going to hit Control-D to duplicate this object and hold Control and move it. You'll see that it snaps, which is really good for your, modular level building or setting up tiles and all that. But you'll see that the snap settings are a little large, so if you go to Edit Snap Settings, you'll be able to change these values to be better suited for whatever your assets are. So 0.2 works for this situation, and I'm going to go ahead and drag that in there. And let's duplicate it one more time and put that end piece on. So now that we have all these, let's go ahead and parent them to the ground so they'll be able to move with the collider. We don't want every individual tile to have its own collider or its own collision box, because that would just be a lot of unnecessary collision boxes in the scene. So the less collision shapes that you could get away with, the better. And we could go ahead and remove this sprite render component because we don't need it anymore. That was just our temp art. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and do it for the rest of these ground platforms. So next up, let's go ahead and change these GUI buttons. I'm going to go ahead and assign an arrow to them all, and let's go ahead and just reset their color to white. Let's see, move left is okay, move right needs this one, and jump needs that one. Alright, those are set up. Now let's get to the good part, the player. So I'm going to go back to our player, and I'm actually going to decouple the player controller and all this gameplay related stuff from the art. So I'm going to create a new empty game object. I'm going to call it art and put it underneath the player. And let's reset the transform. And let's remove the 3D rendering components of our player. So now we've just got an empty game object, and we're going to assign this character to it. So first off, we can't just drag this in because it's going to give us the whole sprite sheet. So let's go up to the sprite mode and click on multiple and hit sprite editor, and it'll give us the sprite editor. And I'm just going to go ahead and change the pivot to bottom and hit slice, leave it on automatic, and it will automatically find all the characters and put the pivot at the bottom. If I left this on center, let me show you what happens. If I hit slice and leave it on center, you'll see that the pivot is right here in the center of the in the player. but generally it's good practice to keep it at the bottom near where the feet are, so you can easily match it up in game. So we're done with this. Let's exit, hit apply to keep those all golden. And let's go ahead and just add in one of these guys as our art. We don't actually need this. We could change that there and call him art. And his feet are actually going to go right there, right where our tag ground is actually. And let's click on the player, make sure that the collision kind of matches up. So we can move him up a little. Let's see how that looks in game. That looks fine. Okay, so now that we have our sprite in there, we're going to want to animate him so he can, do his walk cycle. Let's go to Window, Animation, and let's create a new clip, walk, and we're going to drag in some of these guys. So let's grab this one. Let's see, what do we want? This guy. I'm looking for the sprites that look like they belong to the walk animation. I guess that's it. Alright, let's drag them in. And they're kind of close together, so if I hit play, he's moving way too fast. We can decrease the sample to make him walk slower. That's still kind of fast. Let's go 10. Alright, so that looks about right, but we still want to kind of arrange these in a way that looks right. So that is kind of a big distance. I would say this one works better between that and that. So let's select these guys, move them over, grab this one, and put it next to that one. So that's a little better. And let's see what's next. That one looks good. Let's put him here. And that actually looks pretty good next to that one. Let's let's move that guy over. So that looks pretty good. Now let's go ahead and duplicate this guy, or copy, move our cursor over here and paste. And let's just go ahead and do that in reverse order so we can kind of get him looping. So there we go, we got a little walk animation, and I'm gonna go ahead and increase the sample a little bit. That looks better. Alright, so that's our walk cycle. Let's go ahead and make two more, because we're going to have 3 states that he can be in. He could either walk when we're pressing down on this button or this button. He could stand still when we're pressing no buttons, so we're going to need an idle animation for that. And he can jump, so we're going to need a jump animation. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new clip and call this one idle. And let's see, we'll probably only need one sprite for idle. This one looks right. And let's create another clip for jump. And jump, I think, is also going to be just a one framer. There we go. Alright, so we got our animations all set up. Let's go ahead and build the anim tree. Actually, real quick, I'm going to make a new folder for animations and a new folder for sprites. So let's grab all these sprites, put them in there, and all the animation related stuff in here. Alright, so here's our animation controller. Let's go back to the art, and you'll see that there's this animator component on it since we created some animations on him. We're going to need to plug in this art animator, or actually it should already be there by default. And I'm going to actually rename it to PlayerAnimator. And let's go to the Animator tab. If you don't have one, you could go to Window, Animator, and it should pop up somewhere. So right now walk is highlighted in orange, which means it's the default animation that will play. So if I hit the play button, he'll just start playing his walking animation. We don't want that. We want idle to be default, so right click on idle and set as default. If you don't have any of these nodes in here already, you can click on these animations that we created and drag them in. So we're going to need to create a few parameters. One that will allow us to go from here to here, change from idle to walk, walk to jump, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to create a new parameter called speed, and it's going to be a float, speed, and another one that is a boolean, which will be our isGrounded. So idle, let's right click on it and say make transition to jump. So right click, put the arrow there, and then click on the arrow, and you'll see this condition area. This is basically saying when do you want to transition from idle to jump, and we want to do that when isGrounded is set to false. And we're also going to make a new transition from jump to idle, which will say when isGrounded is true, you switch back to idle. So if I hit play, we can see this in action. IsGrounded is set to false, so this arrow is true and it goes to jump. If I check isGrounded on, then isGrounded is true, so it goes back to idle. Pretty simple. So now let's do the idle transition to walk. We're going to want to transition from idle to walk when our speed is greater than 0.01. But we're also going to want to transfer from idle to walk when our speed is less than -0.01. So when we're pressing the right or the left, if you recall in our last video, right will set speed to +1 and left will set speed to -1. We're going to want to animate our walking animation during both of those states. So to do that, condition, so we have this condition, but we're also going to need to make another transition, and you'll see that it shows up as a multi-arrowed line. That's showing you that there are two transition conditions. If either one of them is true, then we're going to transition. So this is, you can think of this as an OR statement. If this condition is true or this condition is true, we're going to transfer from idle to walk. So we've already set up this one, if speed is greater than 0.01. Let's also make our second condition if speed is less than -0.01. And let's go ahead and make the transition from walk back to idle. And this one we're not going to want an OR statement, we're going to want an AND statement. So to do that, I'll show you right here. So if speed is greater than -0.01, if we hit this plus sign, all the conditions in here are treated kind of like an AND statement. So if the speed is greater than that, and it's less than that, then we'll transition back. The reason why we don't want an OR statement is because, if I remove this, it can always be greater than that number if we are idle or pressing the right arrow, which means it will go back to idle if we're pressing the right arrow. So we need this to be an AND, basically trapping speed between 0. So if speed is essentially 0, then we're going to sit on idle. So to demonstrate this, let's see, I can jump. You can see our little guy changes his animation. And if we change our speed from 0 to 1, then we start animating. And if we also go in the negative direction, we'll also start animating. Cool. Let's go ahead and make the jump and walk transitions. So here we're going to need the isGrounded condition to be set to false. No wait, we're going to need it to true. And we're also going to need our speed to be greater than 0.01, or we're going to need isGrounded is still going to need to be set to true. But our speed can be either greater than 0.01 or less than -0.01. Now let's make the transition from walk back to jump, and we're going to do that if isGrounded is set to false. So let's go ahead and test all of this out all together. So from idle to jump works just fine, and from walking to jump also works. Let's try it in the negative direction. Yep, it all works just fine. One more thing, you could see if we click on our jump node, it's got all these different transitions listed right here. And we can rearrange them to say, I want you to check this condition first, in order to see which transition it'll take. So say this condition going over here is grounded, is the exact same as this condition going over here, also just is grounded. Which one will it choose to go to? That will be determined by what the order is in this transition priorities menu. Alright, so now that we've set all this up, let's go ahead and write the code to actually control all of it. So let's go ahead and make a new C# script and call it AnimatorController. And let's open it up. And in here we're just going to need a few things. First, I'm going to make a public static variable of this class and call it instance. And the reason for this is with this variable I will be able to access it from our PlayerController script without having to find it in our scene and reference that instance. I'll show you how we do that real quick. If I say instance, which is this up here, is equal to this, then if I have an object with this script on it in our scene, on startup, this variable will be set to this script. And since it's a public static variable, I'll be able to access it in any script. So in here, for example, I could make a new AnimatorController variable called myAnim. And then down here in start, I could do myAnim equals AnimatorController dot instance. So that's pretty nifty. Next up, I'm also going to want to create variables for my transform, the animator, and let's also make a vector for our art scale cache. And what the art scale cache is going to do is we're going to use it to determine when we should flip our artwork. So if I go back to our scene, our artwork, if he's facing right, he's going to have a scale of 1 in the X, and if he's facing left, we want to scale him -1. So back in here, let's go ahead and fill in those variables with this dot transform. My anim will be this dot gameObject dot get component, and the component type that we want to get is animator. So if I put this script on our player art, it will find the animator component, which will be here, and we'll be able to do things to it. Mainly we're going to want to change the speed and is grounded variables at certain times. So back in here, let's go ahead and create a function for the flipping that I was talking about earlier. And let's make it public actually, because I'm going to want to call it from PlayerController. So let's make it public void FlipArt, and let's have it pass or get past the current speed. So if the speed is +1 or -1, we'll determine whether we should flip it or not. So in here, we're going to want to check, before we actually flip it, we're going to want to check to see if we should flip it. So I'm going to want to check to see if the current speed is less than 0 and our art scale cache. Oh, we never initialized our art scale cache yet. Let's go ahead and do that now. Art scale cache is going to equal mytrans dot local scale. So at the beginning this is going to equal 1, and then we're going to use it to see if we should flip it between 1 or -1 down here. So yeah, we want to check to see if the local scale.x, the art scale cache.x, is equal to 1. Or we also want to check, let's go ahead and break this up into 2 lines, and we'll scale this up a little so it's easier to see. Let's break this up into, let's break it up. So if current speed is this, or current speed is greater than 0, and art scale cache is equal to -1, then that's when we're going to want to flip. It's squiggly because we have an extra parentheses right there. Right, there we go. So in here is where we're going to want to flip the art. So this statement up here is going to be if we are going left and facing right, or we are going right and facing left. So if we're going left and we're facing right, then we're going to want to flip the art. Or if we're going right and facing left, then we're also going to want to flip the art. So in here, let's just go ahead and set art scale cache.x times equals -1. So it's just going to take whatever the value is right now and multiply it by -1. And then we're going to go back to mytrans.localScale and set it equal to art scale cache. Alright, so now that we've finished our FlipArt function, let's go ahead and make a function for UpdateSpeed. So this one, we're also going to want to make it public, so we could call it from our PlayerController. And let's, in here, go to myAnim. Actually, we're going to want to also take in a float here. And let's set set float. And we're going to want to set the float that is called speed equal to the current speed, which is the value that is passed in up here. And we're also going to want to flip the art in here. And give it the current speed. There we go. And I guess since this function is public, we're going to be calling it from PlayerController, and FlipArt we're not going to be calling from PlayerController, we're going to be calling it from here, so we don't actually need it to be public. I'm just going to go ahead and delete that. And we're going to make one more function in here called public void. This one's also going to be called from our PlayerController script, and I'm going to call this one update. Update is grounded, and it's going to take in a bool called is grounded. And in here it's very simple. All we're going to do is set myanim dot set bool the is grounded bool equal to is grounded. So whatever is passed into this function, that's going to be what our is grounded bool in our animator is going to be equal to. So I'm just going to double check, make sure that speed is spelled correctly and is grounded is also spelled the same way. Alright, so that is it for this script. Let's go back to the PlayerController and input our functions here. So where are we going to want to call these? We're already getting a reference to our AnimatorController script in the start. Next, in the fixed update, right underneath our isGrounded call, we're going to want to update our isGrounded bool for our animator. So let's say myanim dot update isGround ed. Let's change that to grounded. Is grounded is going to be equal to is grounded. Come on, there we go. And that's that. Actually, one thing that I noticed, we don't actually need this else statement in our if. We can in fact move this move call out, and instead of calling move up here, we could do h input is equal to that, and then call the move function either way, because even if we're on Android or PC or whatever, we're still going to be calling this move function, so we might as well just bring it out here. Okay, so we also, back to the matter at hand, we're going to want to set myAnim. In here we're going to want to update the speed and pass in the current speed, which will be our h input value. We're also going to want to call this function down here because when we press the buttons in the 4.6 UI, when we press these buttons, they are calling our start moving function right here. So they're going to be calling the start moving function, and we can pass in the update speed function there instead of doing it in the update. So that's just a tiny optimization we could do on mobile, as opposed to having to always call it in the fixed update for consoles and computers. Alright, so I think that's it. Let's go ahead and give that a go. I'm gonna switch over to the Animator just so we could see these values changing, and let's hit play. Alright, so there we go. We can, oh yeah, it's working perfectly. So we can walk around, we can jump, we can walk around and jump at the same time. Everything is groovy. Alright, so I guess that's it. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe if this was helpful. Don't forget you could follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, my website, devination.com, and of course subscribe to my YouTube channel if you want to get updates whenever I publish a new tutorial video. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.